The stale air in the break room tasted like disappointment and cheap coffee. It was a flavor I'd grown accustomed to. My name is Roman, and for the last 10 years, my world had been a symphony of grinding steel, shouting foreman, and the dull ache in my lower back. I was a construction worker. Not the kind you see on TV, with crisp blueprints and a clean truck. I was the guy hauling rebar until his shoulders screamed, the guy breathing in dust all day for a paycheck that barely covered the rent. My hands were a roadmap of calluses and small scars, a testament to a life spent building a city I could never afford to truly live in. Across from me, my wife, Rebecca, was scrolling through her phone, a faint, bored frown on her perfectly sculpted face. She used to look at me with something other than thinly veiled pity. I remember it. I clung to that memory like a man clinging to a ledge. "You're quiet today," she said, not looking up. Her thumb swiped across the screen, a tiny, repetitive motion that grated on my nerves. "Just tired, Becca," I mumbled, swirling the brown sludge in my cup. "Long day." "It's always a long day, Roman." There it was. The edge in her voice. The little knife she twisted whenever she got the chance. "Anything interesting on the whatever that is?" I asked, gesturing vaguely at her phone. "Just the usual nonsense," she sighed, finally locking the screen and placing it face down on the rickety table. "More news about Elysium." "Ah, Elysium. The miracle drug. For the past month, you couldn't escape it. Billboards showed smiling, rejuvenated elderly people playing tennis. Commercials ran 24/7, promising to cure everything from cancer to a common cold, all while shaving 20 years off your appearance. The fountain of youth in a pill, they called it. And for the first week, it seemed to work. The news was flooded with stories of miraculous recoveries. It was the biggest thing to happen to humanity, and I was too busy trying to make overtime to pay it much mind. "My mother was asking about it again," Rebecca said, her voice a little too casual. "She thinks we should take out a loan." I snorted. "A loan for what?" "We can't even afford a new microwave." "You want to go into lifelong debt for some snake oil?" "It's not snake oil, Roman. Look at the results." Margaret from my office, her father was on his deathbed. Now he's running marathons. She looked at me then, really looked at me. Her eyes, the ones I fell in love with, scanned my face, my dirt-caked work clothes, my tired posture. I could see the calculation, the disappointment. She wasn't seeing her husband. She was seeing a roadblock. A failure. The site foreman, Richard, swaggered into the break room then. He was everything I wasn't. Polished shoes, a crisp shirt that cost more than my weekly pay, and a smile that never quite reached his eyes. He was my boss. He was also the man whose cologne I sometimes smelled on my wife's clothes when she came home late from working overtime at the office. "Roman." "Just the man I wanted to see," Richard boomed, slapping me on the back hard enough to make me spill my coffee. "Got a little job for you." "A favor, really?" My stomach tightened. Favors from Richard were never good. They usually involved heights, confined spaces, or someone else's mistake that I had to fix. "What is it, Rick?" I asked, wiping my hand on my pants. Rebecca's demeanor changed instantly. A bright, almost girlish smile spread across her face. "Rick, I was just telling Roman how hard you've been working, everyone." It was meant as a joke, but it came out as a flirtation. Richard's eyes flickered towards her, a predatory gleam I knew all too well. "Can't build a skyline without breaking a little sweat, Rebecca. You know how it is." He turned his attention back to me. "The freight elevator on the North Tower, the old one, is acting up again. The counterweight sensors are glitching. I need someone to go down to the sub-basement 3, manually check the pulley alignment. It's a dirty job, but you're the best I've got." Sub-basement 3. It was a cavernous, unfinished pit, 3 stories beneath the ground, dark and damp. The freight elevator was a rattling death trap nobody liked to use. Can't it wait until the morning crew gets here? I asked. It's almost quitting time. Afraid not, Richard said, his smile tightening. Big inspection tomorrow. Need it signed off tonight. I'll make it worth your while on your check. He glanced at Rebecca again. Your wife here was just telling me you two were hoping for a nice dinner out this weekend. A little bonus should cover it. My wife. He said it so easily. Rebecca placed a hand on my arm. Her touch felt cold. Go on, honey. It'll be quick. Then we can go home. Her eyes pleaded with me. But what was she pleading for? For me to do the job, or for me to stop questioning her and her friend? I felt trapped. Cornered by my boss's authority and my wife's silent pressure. Fine, I grumbled, pushing myself up from the chair. I'll go check the stupid elevator. That's the spirit. Richard clapped. Rebecca, why don't you walk him down? Make sure he doesn't get lost. It was an odd request. She never came onto the active site. She hated the dust. But she nodded eagerly. Of course. I'll make sure he gets right to it. As we walked out of the break room, the roar of the construction site enveloped us. The path to the North Tower was a maze of scaffolding and half-finished concrete walls. Rebecca walked beside me, her heels clicking awkwardly on the plywood walkways. You know, she began, her voice soft, Rick is really looking out for you. He sees your potential. He sees a guy he can dump the worst jobs on, I corrected. Don't be like that, Roman. This is a good opportunity to show some initiative. We reached the freight elevator. It was a huge, rusted steel cage, the kind used for hauling pallets of cement and heavy machinery. The doors were open, revealing a dark, greasy shaft that plunged into the earth. Rebecca pressed the call button, and with a groan of protesting metal, the cage began its slow, noisy ascent from the depths. I'll wait with you until it gets here, she said, pulling her jacket tighter around her. I leaned against a concrete pillar, watching her. She was beautiful. Even here, in the grime and chaos of my world, she looked like she belonged on a magazine cover. And I couldn't shake the feeling that she knew it. And she knew I wasn't enough to keep her there. The elevator arrived with a final, shuddering clang. The gate slid open with a screech. All right, I said, grabbing a heavy-duty flashlight from a nearby toolbox. I'll be back up in 20 minutes. I stepped inside the cage. The floor was slick with some kind of hydraulic fluid. Be careful, she said, her voice strangely flat. I turned to face her. She stood just outside the gate, her hand hovering near the control panel. Becca? Is everything okay? She gave me a sad, little smile. A smile I'd never seen before. It was full of pity. I'm sorry, Roman, she whispered. And then she slammed her hand onto the door close button. The heavy steel gate began to slide shut. Becca, what are you doing? I yelled, lunging for the door, but it was too late. It locked with a heavy, final thud. Through the grate, I could see her face. The pity was gone, replaced by a cold, hard resolve. Richard stepped out from behind the pillar. He wrapped his arm around my wife's waist, pulling her close. He kissed her, right in front of me. A long, possessive kiss. Rebecca melted into him. My world tilted on its axis. The roaring in my ears wasn't from the machinery anymore. It was the sound of my life, my marriage, my entire reality, shattering into a million pieces. Why? I screamed, my fists banging against the cold steel of the gate. Richard pulled away from her, a smug grin on his face. He looked at me, a caged animal. His animal. Simple economics, Roman, he said, his voice dripping with condescension. She wants a better life. I can provide it. You're just dead weight. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a pair of industrial cable cutters. My blood ran cold. What are you doing?" I stammered. "There was an accident," Richard said, his voice echoing in the concrete hallway. "Tragic. Faulty elevator cable. Poor Roman never stood a chance." He walked over to the main hoist mechanism, the thick steel cable spooling into the darkness above. Rebecca didn't try to stop him. She just watched, her face a blank mask. "Becca! Please!" I begged, my voice cracking. "Don't let him do this. We can fix this." She just shook her head slowly. "There's nothing to fix, Roman," she said, her voice as cold as the grave he was sending me to. "Goodbye." With a grunt of effort, Richard snapped the heavy-duty cutters around the primary suspension cable. I saw the steel strands begin to fray. I heard a deafening, metallic snap. And then the world dropped out from under me. The elevator plunged into the darkness. My stomach leaped into my throat. A primal scream was ripped from my lungs, a sound of pure terror. The emergency brake screeched, sparks flying against the shaft walls, but they couldn't hold. Metal shrieked and tore. I was thrown against the ceiling, then the floor, as the cage tumbled and fell. The floors flew by in a blur of concrete and darkness. Sub-basement 1. Sub-basement 2. I closed my eyes, bracing for the impact that would extinguish my pathetic life. My last thought was of her face. Her cold, merciless face. And then, in the roaring darkness, a new sound. A soft, digital chime. A blue light filled the falling elevator, emanating from me. Catastrophic system failure detected. Host vitality at 2%. Emergency protocol initiated. Bonding with host success. Welcome to the architect system. The words appeared in my vision. Clean, white text hanging in the air like a ghost. I thought I was hallucinating. The final, desperate fantasy of a dying mind. Threat analysis, terminal velocity impact in 3.2 seconds. Recommendation, activate kinetic dampening field. Cost, 100 initial system energy. Authorize? Why Len? I didn't understand. I couldn't process it. But instinct screamed at me. Yes. I roared into the void. Yes. Authorization confirmed. Activating kinetic dampening field. A sphere of shimmering blue energy instantly enveloped the elevator cage. The roaring wind outside fell silent. The feeling of falling lessened. It was like being submerged in thick jelly. And then, impact. It wasn't the bone-shattering obliteration I expected. It was a deep, resonant thud that vibrated through my entire being. The metal cage around me crumpled like a tin can, but the blue field held, absorbing the cataclysmic force. The world went black. When I came to, it was to the sound of dripping water and the smell of ozone. I was lying on the twisted floor of the elevator cage, which was now a mangled heap of scrap metal at the bottom of the shaft. By all rights, I should have been a red smear on the floor. But I was whole. My body ached with a pain so profound it felt like my very atoms were bruised. But I was alive. System reboot complete. Host status, critical. Broken bones detected. Internal bleeding detected. System recommends immediate application of biomesh. Blueprint, basic biomesh, grade F available. Construction cost, 50 chrono shards. Current chrono shard balance, 0. The text floated in front of my eyes again. Chrono shards? Biomesh? What was happening? Objective, acquire chrono shards. Method, deconstruct matter. Target nearby material to begin. I pushed myself up, my arm screaming in protest. It was definitely broken. I could see the bone trying to push its way out of my skin. Nausea washed over me. Deconstruct matter? I rasped, my voice hoarse. As I spoke, a blue targeting reticle appeared in my vision. It hovered over a bent piece of rebar sticking out of the elevator's crumpled wall. Target acquired, low-grade steel rebar. Potential yield, 2 chrono shards. Deconstruct? Why Len? This was insane. But I was in a crumpled box at the bottom of a hole, betrayed, and dying. Insane seemed like the only option left. I focused on the rebar, on the command, and thought, yes. My hand, my good hand, began to glow with a faint blue light. I reached out and touched the steel bar. It dissolved under my fingers. Not into dust, but into shimmering particles of blue light that flowed into my palm and vanished. The bar was just gone. Deconstruction complete. Plus 2 chrono shards acquired. Current balance, 2. I stared at my hand, then at the empty space where the rebar had been. It was real. This was real. A surge of adrenaline, of something wild and terrifying and hopeful, shot through me. I began touching everything I could reach. A twisted panel of sheet metal. Plus 1 chrono shard. A shattered piece of the control panel. Plus 3 chrono shards. The rubber sole of my own ruined boot. Plus 1 chrono shard. I was a man possessed, tearing my prison apart particle by particle, watching my chrono shard balance tick upward. 10, 25, 48. Finally, I had enough. Blueprint, basic biomesh, grade F. Construction cost, 50 chrono shards. Available balance, 52. Construct? Why Len? Yes, I breathed. My hand glowed again, brighter this time. The blue light swirled in my palm, coalescing, weaving itself into a physical object. A small, grey, gel-like patch materialized in my hand. It felt cool to the touch. Biomesh, grade F, applied to injured area for rapid cellular regeneration. One-time use. With trembling fingers, I tore open my sleeve and pressed the patch against the mangled flesh of my broken arm. The sensation was immediate and bizarre. A coldness spread from the patch, followed by an intense itching. I could feel my bones grinding, shifting, knitting themselves back together. Torn muscle fibers weaved and reconnected. The skin stitched itself shut, leaving behind only a faint pink line. In less than a minute, the horrific compound fracture was gone. The pain was gone. My arm was healed. I flexed my fingers, made a fist. It was good as new. Tears streamed down my face. Not of pain, but of sheer, unadulterated shock and a dawning, terrifying understanding. I was alive. And I had something new. Something powerful. A wave of rage, pure and undiluted, washed away the shock. Richard. Rebecca. They thought they'd killed me. They thought they were free. They were wrong. I would get out of this hole. And then, I would find them. My revenge wouldn't be swift. It would be constructed, piece by piece. Just like my new life. New objective, escape the sub-basement. System recommends constructing a basic tool. Blueprint unlocked, salvaged pipe wrench, grade F. Construction cost, 15 chrono shards. I looked at the crumpled elevator door, the only way out. It was wedged shut, the metal bent and fused from the impact. I didn't have enough shards. I deconstructed the floor beneath me, the remaining walls, anything my glowing hand could touch. The count climbed again. When I had enough, I didn't hesitate. Construct. A heavy, solid steel pipe wrench formed in my hand. It felt real. It felt weighty. It felt like the first tool of my new trade. Vengeance. I wedged the wrench into a gap in the doors and pulled. Metal groaned. Muscles I didn't even know I had strained. The biomesh had not only healed my arm, it felt stronger than before. With a final, agonized shriek of tearing metal, the door bent open just enough for me to squeeze through. I stumbled out into the oppressive darkness of sub-basement 3. The air was thick with the smell of damp concrete and something else. Something metallic and coppery. The smell of blood. My flashlight was gone, shattered in the fall. But the system interface in my vision provided a faint, ambient blue glow, just enough to see a few feet in front of me. And what I saw made my blood run cold all over again. There were bodies. The night shift crew. Or what was left of them. They were torn apart, scattered across the concrete floor in gruesome tableaus of violence. This wasn't an accident. This was a slaughter. And then I heard it. A wet, tearing sound from the far end of the vast, cavernous room. Followed by a low, guttural growl. I froze, every muscle in my body screaming at me to run, to hide. I flattened myself against a massive concrete support pillar, peering into the gloom. The blue light of my interface faintly illuminated the source of the sound. It was a man. Or it had been. He was crouched over one of the bodies, his back to me. He was wearing the tattered remains of a security guard's uniform. But his skin was wrong. It was turning a mottled green-gray, stretched tight over a frame that was changing. His spine was elongating, pushing upwards, his shoulders broadening at an unnatural angle. A tail, thick and reptilian, had burst through the back of his pants and was twitching spasmodically on the floor. As I watched, his head snapped up. He turned, and I saw his face. His jaw had stretched into a long, narrow snout. His teeth were now a row of serrated needles. His eyes were no longer human, they were vertical slits, yellow and predatory. He was a monster from a nightmare. He looked like a dinosaur. A velociraptor from a textbook, but wrapped in the distorted skin of a man. My mind reeled. Elysium. The miracle drug. This had to be it. This was the price of a second chance. The creature sniffed the air, its head darting back and forth. Its yellow eyes locked directly onto my position. It let out a terrifying, bird-like shriek that echoed through the sub-basement. And then it charged. It moved with an unnatural, terrifying speed, its claws clicking on the concrete floor. Panic seized me. I had a pipe wrench. He had claws that had just torn a dozen men to shreds. The math wasn't good. Threat detected, stage 1 Elysium degenerate, raptor kin. Analysis, high speed, low armor. Recommendation, construct defensive offensive implement. New blueprint unlocked, rebar crowbar, grade F. Cost, 10 chrono shards. I didn't have time to deconstruct anything. The raptor thing was closing in, its jaws snapping. I did the only thing I could. I hefted the pipe wrench and swung. It was a desperate, clumsy blow. The creature was too fast. It ducked under the swing, and its claws raked across my chest. The fabric of my shirt tore, and fire erupted across my skin. I stumbled back, crying out in pain. Deep gashes opened on my chest, blood welling instantly. Host vitality at 78%. Bleeding status effect applied. The raptor shrieked in triumph and lunged for my throat. I threw myself backward, landing hard on the concrete. I scrambled away, crab walking in a desperate retreat as the monster stalked me. Its intelligence was horrifying. It wasn't just a beast. It was a hunter, and it was playing with its food. I needed shards. I needed a weapon. My eyes darted around the floor, and I saw it. A discarded tool belt from one of the dead workers. The raptor paused, tilting its head, curious. It was a fatal mistake. I dug for the belt, my hand glowing. Target acquired, leather tool belt. Potential yield, 7 CS. Target acquired, steel hammer. Potential yield, 8 CS. Target acquired, box of screws. Potential yield, 5 CS. Deconstruct all. I screamed in my mind. The entire tool belt and its contents dissolved into a shower of blue light that funneled into me. Plus 20 chrono shards acquired. Blueprint, rebar crowbar. Construct. Why Len? Yes. The light swirled in my free hand, and a long, sharpened piece of rebar, bent into a crude crowbar, materialized. The raptor, startled by the light, hesitated for a second. That was all I needed. It lunged again, and this time, I was ready. I rolled to the side, letting its momentum carry it past me. As it went by, I thrust the sharpened end of the rebar crowbar upwards with all my strength. The point plunged deep into the creature's soft underbelly. It shrieked, a sound of agony and surprise, and thrashed wildly. The crowbar was ripped from my grasp. The monster stumbled a few steps, trying to pull the impaled rebar from its gut, before crashing to the floor. It twitched a few more times, yellow blood pooling on the concrete, and then lay still. Elysium Degenerate neutralized. First kill bonus awarded. Plus 100 chrono shards. Plus 1 system experience point. Level up. Host level is now 2. Stat points awarded, 5. Please allocate. I lay on the floor, panting, my chest on fire. The adrenaline was wearing off, leaving behind a profound, bone-deep terror. I had just killed a man. A monster. A man-monster. I didn't know what to call it. I staggered to my feet, clutching my bleeding chest. System, I whispered. Status. A semi-transparent window opened in my vision. Name, Roman. Level, 2. Title, none. Vitals, 65 of 100, bleeding. System energy, 80 of 120. Chrono shards, 112. Strength, 11. Dexterity, 9. Stamina, 12. Cognition, 10. Unallocated stat points, 5. Allocate all points to stamina, I gasped. More stamina meant more health, more survivability. 5 points allocated to stamina. Stamina, 12 and GT, 17. Vitals, 65 125. The bleeding didn't stop, but I felt a subtle surge of energy, a resilience I didn't have before. I needed to stop the bleeding. I looked at the dead raptor. My stomach churned, but the system had other ideas. Target acquired, Stage 1 Elysium Degenerate Corpse. Potential yield, 45 chrono shards, minor bioenergy trace. Deconstruct. Why Len? Bile rose in my throat, but I needed the shards. I forced myself to walk over to the corpse, averted my eyes, and placed my hand on its cooling, scaly flesh. Yes. The body dissolved into light, leaving behind only a puddle of yellow blood. Plus 45 chrono shards acquired. Current balance, 157. I immediately accessed the blueprint menu in my mind. Biomesh was 50 shards. I constructed one and slapped it onto my chest. The burning pain subsided as the gel stitched my flesh back together. I took a deep, shuddering breath. The world had gone completely, utterly insane. People were turning into dinosaurs. My wife and my boss had tried to murder me. And I had some kind of superpower that let me turn garbage into life-saving medicine. Okay. Fine. One step at a time, Roman. Survive. Escape. Revenge. That was the new mantra. I retrieved my crowbar and wrench, the only 2 possessions I had in this new world. I had to get out of this basement. The main elevators were down. That left the stairs. 3 flights up to ground level. Each floor could be a death trap. I began to walk, sticking to the shadows, every sense on high alert. The silence of the sub-basement was somehow more terrifying than the sounds of combat. As I reached the stairwell door, I heard it. A sound from above. crying. It was a woman's voice, raw with fear and grief. My first instinct was to ignore it. A survivor was a liability. They could be loud, weak, a target. But I couldn't. That part of the old me, the man who helped his neighbors, wasn't dead yet. Maybe that man was a fool. I pushed the heavy steel door open and started my slow, cautious ascent. The crying was coming from the first sub-basement. The door was ajar. I peeked through the gap. The room was a parking garage, filled with the expensive cars of the site's executives. A woman was huddled between a sleek black sedan and a concrete pillar. She had a tire iron clutched in her white-knuckled hands, and she was staring in terror at something deeper in the garage. She was dressed in a sharp, practical security uniform, her dark hair pulled back in a tight ponytail. Even covered in dust and tear tracks, she was striking. Her eyes were wide with fear, but her jaw was set in a look of fierce determination. She wasn't just crying, she was getting ready to fight. I followed her gaze. 2 more of those raptor things were circling a body on the floor. They hadn't noticed her yet. Or me. This was my chance to slip by unnoticed. To continue my mission. Escape. Revenge. But I looked at the woman again. At the way she held the tire iron like it was the only thing keeping the world from ending. And I knew I couldn't leave her. Damn it. I took a deep breath and stepped out of the stairwell. "Hey," I whispered, my voice a low hiss. Her head whipped around, her eyes widening in panic. She raised the tire iron, ready to swing. "Whoa, easy," I said, showing my empty hands. "I'm not one of them." She looked me over, her gaze sharp and assessing. She saw the blood on my torn shirt, the makeshift weapons in my hands. She saw a survivor. "What do you want?" she breathed, her voice trembling but firm. "To get out of here," I said. "Looks like you do too. There are 2 of them over there. You and I make a noise, we fight them together. We might live. We try it alone, we're dead. Simple math." She hesitated for a moment, her eyes darting between me and the creatures. Then she gave a curt, sharp nod. "Okay. What's the plan?" "I'll take the one on the left. You take the one on the right. Go for the head or the gut. They're fast, but they're not armored." "Got it," she said, her fear seemingly replaced by a cold focus. This woman was a fighter. "What's your name?" I asked. "Raina," she replied. "You?" "Roman." "Okay, Roman," she said, taking a deep breath. "On your signal." I looked at the 2 raptors, still distracted by their gruesome meal. This was it. The first choice of my new life. Not just to survive for myself, but to fight for someone else. Maybe the old Roman wasn't completely dead after all. "Now," I whispered, and together, we charged into the darkness. The raptors shrieked, surprised by the sudden assault. Raina was a blur of motion. She moved with a trained efficiency that I lacked, her tire iron swinging in a vicious arc that connected with the side of one creature's head with a sickening crack. It stumbled, disoriented. My target was faster. It dodged my initial swing and leaped at me, claws extended. I brought my pipe wrench up in a defensive block. Claws screeched against steel. The impact jarred my arm, but I held firm. I shoved the creature back and swung the rebar crowbar like a baseball bat, aiming for its legs. The sharpened point ripped through its thigh. It howled in pain and rage, its leg buckling. Beside me, Raina was fighting with a brutal grace. She dodged a snapping bite and brought the tire iron down on the raptor's back, eliciting another pain shriek. She wasn't just surviving, she was dismantling her opponent. My wounded raptor lunged again, ignoring its injured leg. I sidestepped, letting it pass, and brought the pipe wrench down on the back of its skull. Bone crunched. It dropped like a stone. Elysium Degenerate neutralized. plus 50 chrono shards. Rayna's opponent, seeing its packmate fall, became frenzied. It ignored Rayna and charged me, seeing me as the greater threat. "Roman, look out!" Rayna yelled. I didn't have time to raise my weapon. But Rayna did. She threw her tire iron like a spear. It spun through the air and slammed into the side of the raptor's neck. The creature gargled and fell, twitching. Silence descended on the parking garage, broken only by our ragged breaths. We stood there for a long moment, two strangers covered in blood and grime, surrounded by death. "Thanks," I finally managed to say, my voice hoarse. "You're fast." "Ex-military police," she said, walking over to retrieve her tire iron. She didn't seem shaken. She seemed angry. Focused. "You're not bad yourself, for a construction worker." She gestured at my clothes. I looked down at the torn, bloody shirt, the dusty pants. It felt like a lifetime ago that I had put them on. "Something like that," I said. I walked over to the two corpses and placed my hand on them. "What are you doing?" Rayna asked, her voice sharp with suspicion. "Recycling," I said simply. The bodies dissolved into blue light, flowing into me. Plus 100 chrono shards acquired. Rayna stared, her eyes wide with disbelief. What was that?" "It's complicated," I said, not wanting to explain the impossible. "Let's just say I picked up a new skill." She didn't press. In a world where men were turning into dinosaurs, a man who could make bodies disappear was just another Tuesday. "We need to get to the surface," she said, her voice all business again. "Find weapons. Find a defensible position." Agreed. Stairwell is this way. We moved together, a team born of desperation. We cleared the next 2 floors cautiously. Ground level was chaos. Through the grimy windows of the lobby, we could see the world we left behind was gone. The sky was choked with black smoke. The sounds of the city were wrong. Not traffic and chatter, but screams, roars, and the sickening crunch of metal. People were running in the streets, and they were being hunted. Not just by the raptor things, but by other, bigger monsters. I saw a man in a business suit suddenly bloat, his spine cracking and reforming, his skin hardening into a gray, plated hide as he transformed into something resembling a triceratops, charging blindly through a bus stop. A woman's desperate sprint was cut short as a massive, winged creature, a pterodactyl, swooped down from a skyscraper and carried her away, her screams fading into the smoky sky. This wasn't an isolated incident in a sub-basement. It was the end of the world. "My God," Rayna whispered, her face pale. "Elysium, everyone was taking it." My thoughts flashed to Rebecca and Richard. Did they take the drug? Was it part of their plan? Get rich, live forever, rejuvenated and happy, while I rotted in a hole. The thought fueled my rage, burning away the fear. Good. I hope they took it. It would make finding them that much more interesting. "The security office is on the 2nd floor, Rayna said, pulling me from my dark thoughts. "There's a reinforced armory. Handguns, shark guns. We can gear up there." "Good plan," I said. "Lead the way." The 2nd floor was eerily quiet. The offices were deserted, papers scattered everywhere as if people had left in a great hurry. We found the security office. The door was thick steel, with a keypad lock. It was locked tight. "Damn," Rayna cursed, jiggling the handle. "The power must be out." "It's on a mag lock." I stepped forward and placed my hand on the door. Target acquired, high-grade steel security door. Analysis, too dense to deconstruct with current system level. I then looked at the keypad. Target acquired, digital keypad lock. Potential yield, 15 chrono shards, basic electronic parts. Deconstruct? Why Len? "Stand back," I said. Raina looked at me, confused, but did as I asked. I placed my hand on the keypad. It dissolved into blue light. With a heavy clunk, the magnetic lock disengaged. I pushed the door open. Raina just stared at me, a mixture of awe and fear in her eyes. "Your new skill is pretty handy, Roman." "I'm full of surprises," I said, a grim smile touching my lips for the first time. The armory was a godsend. Racks of shotguns, pistols, and boxes of ammunition. Raina moved with practiced ease, checking the action on a pump-action shotgun, her hands moving with a familiarity that was both reassuring and intimidating. "Take this," she said, tossing me a 9mm pistol. "Do you know how to use it?" "Point and shoot, right?" I said, fumbling with the weapon. It felt alien in my hands, cold and dangerous. She sighed and quickly showed me the basics. How to release the safety, how to check the magazine, how to stand. While she loaded shotgun shells into a bandolier, I looked around the room. My system was highlighting items. Blueprint scanned, handcuffs, grade E. Cost, 30 CS. Blueprint scanned, stun baton, grade E. Cost, 75 CS. Blueprint scanned, Kevlar vest, grade D. Cost, 250 CS. My architect system wasn't just about deconstructing. It could learn. It could copy blueprints. I had 257 shards left. Not enough for the vest. But I turned to a locker full of old, expired Kevlar vests. I placed my hand on them. "Deconstruct all?" "Why, Len?" "Yes." A pile of 10 vests dissolved. Plus 500 chrono shards acquired. Current balance, 757. Raina was too busy loading up to notice. My mind raced. I could make a vest for myself. And for her. It felt right. She was competent, strong. She'd saved my life. Keeping her alive was just good strategy. That's what I told myself. Construct, Kevlar vest, grade D. Cost, 250 CS. Yes. Construct, Kevlar vest, grade D. Cost, 250 CS. Yes. 2 vests materialized in a swirl of blue light in my arms. They were new, clean, perfect. I walked over to Raina. "Here," I said, holding one out to her. "Put this on." She stopped loading and stared at the vest, then at me. The suspicion was back in her eyes. "Where did you get these?" "Made them," I said. "You made them?" "With your light show." "Yeah." "Are you going to wear it or not?" She looked from the vest to my face, searching for something. Whatever she found, it must have satisfied her. She took the vest and shrugged it on over her uniform. It was a perfect fit. I put on my own. It felt solid, reassuring. A layer of protection against this new, savage world. We finished gearing up in silence, a new understanding passing between us. We were no longer just 2 random survivors. We were partners. Armed and armored, we looked out the window at the burning city. The scale of the apocalypse was breathtaking. This wasn't just a city in chaos. This was the fall of man. "So what now, architect?" Raina asked, her voice quiet. She had a nickname for me already. I looked at the chaos below, at the monsters that used to be my neighbors, my co-workers. I thought of Richard and Rebecca, somewhere out there, thinking they had gotten away with it. My hand rested on the cool steel of the pistol at my hip. The system interface hummed in the back of my mind, a silent promise of power. I was no longer Roman, the broke construction worker. He died in that elevator. I was someone new. Someone who could tear down the old world and build something new from its ruins. "Now," I said, my voice cold and hard. We survive. We get stronger. And I have a couple of old friends I need to visit. Raina looked at me, a glimmer of understanding in her dark eyes. She racked her shotgun, the sound echoing in the quiet room like a declaration of war. Good, she said. I do love a good reunion. The first day of the new world was over. And my first day had just begun. The city burned. From our vantage point in the second-floor security office, the world looked like a canvas painted by a madman. Plumes of greasy black smoke coiled into the twilight sky from a dozen different locations. The constant, cacophonous symphony of the apocalypse, roars, screams, crashing metal, and the distant, rhythmic thud of something very, very large, was the new soundtrack of our lives. Beside me, Raina was a statue of grim resolve, her shotgun held at a low ready. The adrenaline from our fight in the garage had faded, leaving a cold, hard clarity in its place. We were alive. We were armed. We were trapped. This building is our best bet, she said, her voice low and steady, her eyes scanning the street below. Concrete and steel construction, multiple floors, limited access points. It's defensible. I nodded, my mind already working, my system interface subtly highlighting the structural elements of the room. Reinforced concrete wall. Deconstruction level required, 5. Current level, 2. Ballistic glass window. Deconstruction level required, 4. Current level, 2. My power had limits. I wasn't a god. Not yet. Agreed, I said. But this office is too exposed. The glass is a weakness. It's rated for small arms fire, but I doubt it'll stop a 10-ton triceratops, she conceded. We need to get higher. The executive suites. Top floors. Harder for the big ones to reach. And harder for us to escape if we get cornered, I countered. It's a trade-off. We need a defensible position to rest, plan, and figure out what the hell is going on. She was right. Surviving the next 5 minutes was useless if we didn't have a plan for the next 12 hours. All right. Top floors it is, I said. We take the stairs. Slowly. We clear every floor on the way up. Raina gave me a sharp, appreciative nod. You catch on quick, architect. The nickname felt strange, but not unwelcome. It was a recognition of my new reality. I was Roman, the architect. The construction worker was a ghost. We left the relative safety of the armory and stepped back into the silent, unnerving hallways of the office building. Every shadow seemed to menace, every distant sound was a potential threat. We moved like wraiths, my pistol and her shotgun sweeping every corner before we advanced. It was a slow, grueling process. Floor 3 was an accounting department, a sea of empty cubicles and overturned chairs. Floor 4 was marketing, where a garish poster of the Elysium drug greeted us. A smiling, healthy family on a beach, with the tagline, "The future is you." Rejuvenated. I felt a surge of cold fury. I placed my hand on the poster. Deconstruct? Why Len? Yes. The smiling family dissolved into blue particles. +1 chrono shard acquired. It was a petty act, but it felt good. Raina watched me but said nothing. She understood. We reached the 5th floor and found our first sign of trouble. The elevator doors were bent outwards, mangled and torn open from the inside. Deep claw marks, at least a foot long, were gouged into the steel. Something big came through here, Raina whispered, her shotgun tight against her shoulder. We followed the path of destruction. A wide swathe of office furniture was smashed and tossed aside, leading to a large conference room. The door was gone, the frame splintered. Inside, we found the source. It was a hulking beast, easily the size of a small car. Its body was low to the ground, covered in thick, bony plates like an ankylosaur. A massive, club-like tail lay still on the floor, having smashed the room's expensive mahogany table to splinters. It was dead. Its thick throat had been torn out, and its armored hide was peppered with quills. They were long, black, and wickedly sharp, like porcupine spines. What the hell did this? I breathed, staring at the bizarre scene. Stage 2 Elysium degenerate, ankylosing corpse detected. Cause of death, neurotoxin injection via projectile quills. The system gave me answers I didn't even ask for. Neurotoxin. Quills. That meant the killer was still around. We need to go, Raina said, her voice urgent. Now. As she spoke, a soft, chittering sound came from the ceiling. We both looked up. Clinging to the acoustic tiles above us were three creatures unlike any I'd seen before. They were small, no bigger than a large dog, with sleek, black bodies. They looked vaguely reptilian, but their backs were covered in a dense mat of those same deadly quills. Their heads were small and pointed, with multiple, glittering black eyes that all focused on us. Threat detected, Stage 1 Elysium degenerate, Quill Beast X3. Analysis, high dexterity, ranged poison attack, low vitals. Before I could even shout a warning, the creatures arched their backs. With a series of sharp, pneumatic hisses, they fired a volley of quills. Down! Raina yelled, tackling me to the floor. We hit the carpet hard as the black spines zipped through the air where we had been standing, embedding themselves deep into the wall behind us with solid thuds. A puff of greenish vapor came from the point of impact. Neurotoxin. We were pinned down behind the corpse of the giant ankylo beast. They can shoot those things? I gasped, my heart hammering against my ribs. Apparently. Raina grunted, peeking cautiously over our dead cover. Another volley of quills forced her back down. They're reloading. They seem to have to puff themselves up first. We can't stay here, I said. My pistol won't do much against targets on the ceiling, and your shotgun spread will be too wide. My mind was racing, cycling through my blueprints. Wrench? Crowbar? Useless. I needed something with a shield. I needed an idea. I need a distraction, I told Raina. A loud noise. Over there. I pointed to the far side of the room. Can you do it? What are you planning? She asked, her eyes narrowed. Something stupid. Can you do it? She hesitated, then nodded. I'll shoot the window. It'll be loud. You'll have maybe 2 seconds. Don't get killed, architect. That's the plan. She took a deep breath. On 3. 1, 2. On 3, she vaulted over our cover, fired a single, deafening blast from her shotgun that shattered the conference room's large window, and immediately dove back down. The 3 quill beasts shrieked in alarm, all their multi-facete eyes snapping towards the source of the sound. It was the opening I needed. I didn't run for the door. I ran towards the dead ankylo beast. I placed both my hands on its armored plating. Target acquired, Stage 2 Elysium degenerate corpse. Potential yield, 150 chrono shards, minor bioenergy trace, grade D bony plates. Deconstruct. The massive creature dissolved in a brilliant flash of blue light, the most intense deconstruction I had performed yet. The light was blinding. The quill beasts chittered in confusion, momentarily dazzled. Plus 150 chrono shards acquired. New material acquired, grade D bony plates X5. New blueprint scan due to material acquisition, plate shield, grade D. The notifications flashed in my vision as I was already moving. Blueprint, plate shield, grade D. Cost, 100 CS, 3x grade D bony plates. Construct. The blue light reconverged around my left arm. It swirled and solidified, forming a heavy, thick shield from the very material of the beast I had just vaporized. It was round, almost 3 feet in diameter, and covered in the same knobby, bony armor. The quill beasts recovered their senses just as the shield fully formed. They shrieked in fury and unleashed another volley, this time directly at me. I raised my new shield. The quills hammered against it with a series of sharp cracks. They didn't penetrate. The neurotoxin puffed harmlessly against the bony surface. Raina stared, her mouth slightly agape. No way. My turn, I growled. With the shield covering my advance, I charged. I still had my pistol in my right hand. I got directly beneath the first creature and fired. The sound of the 9mm was deafening in the enclosed space. The beast convulsed and fell from the ceiling with a wet smack. Plus 40 chrono shards. The other two began to scuttle away across the ceiling, heading for the hallway. They're running! Raina shouted. Not on my watch. I focused on the fallen creature at my feet. Deconstruct. Plus 40 chrono shards. I needed more raw materials. I looked at the shattered conference table. Target acquired, high-quality mahogany table, destroyed. Deconstruct? Why Len? Yes. The massive pile of splintered wood dissolved. Plus 80 chrono shards. New material acquired, grade E hardwood X25. New blueprint scanned, wooden spear, grade F. Useless. But the shards were what I needed. My balance was now over 300. We chased the remaining quill beasts into the hallway. They were fast, skittering across the ceiling like monstrous spiders. They fired quills as they fled, forcing us to take cover behind corners. We're not going to catch them, Raina said, reloading her shotgun. They'll just set up an ambush for us on the next floor. Then we don't let them get to the next floor, I said. I looked at the long, wide hallway. An idea, born of desperation and my old job, sparked in my mind. Cover me, I said, stepping out into the middle of the hallway. The two creatures on the ceiling stopped, tittering at the sight of me. I raised my shield as they fired another volley. The quills clattered harmlessly. Now. I placed my free hand on the floor. On the cheap linoleum tiles. Target acquired, linoleum flooring. Deconstruct? Why Len? Yes. A 10-foot section of the flooring in front of me dissolved, revealing the concrete subfloor beneath. Plus 15 chrono shards. The creatures paused, confused. I then placed my hand on the wall. It was drywall. Target acquired, drywall section. Deconstruct. A huge chunk of the wall vanished, exposing the metal studs and wiring within. Plus 10 chrono shards. Roman, what are you doing? Raina called out. Remodeling, I grunted, sweat beading on my forehead. The rapid deconstruction was taking a toll. The creatures seemed to realize I was vulnerable while using my power. They both fired at once. I was too slow to raise my shield. One of the quills grazed my leg. A searing, electric pain shot up my limb. Poison status effect applied. Host vitals dropping at 1 point per second. Gah! I cried out, stumbling. My leg went numb. System recommends immediate application of antitoxin. Blueprint unlocked, basic antitoxin, grade E. Cost, 150 chrono shards. I didn't have time. Raina laid down covering fire, her shotgun booming in the hallway, forcing the quill beasts to retreat further down. Roman, are you hit? Just a scratch, I lied, gritting my teeth against the pain. My vision was starting to swim. I had one chance. I focused my will, ignoring the fire in my veins. I looked at the exposed metal studs in the wall. Target acquired, low-grade steel studs X8. Deconstruct. The studs dissolved in a flash. Plus 40 chrono shards. Then, I looked at the concrete subfloor. I had a blueprint in my mind. Not one the system gave me. One from my 10 years of experience. A simple deadfall trap. The system was a tool. I was the architect. Manual construction mode initiated. Specify blueprint parameters. A grid-like interface appeared in my vision. I visualized it. A thin, brittle layer of concrete, barely an inch thick, to replace the section of floor I'd removed. Underneath it, a lattice of sharpened rebar, scavenged from the deconstructed studs, pointing upwards. A pitfall. Blueprint integrity, poor. Estimated stability, 2 minutes. Construction cost, 120 chrono shards. Do it! The blue light flared, brighter than ever before. Shards poured from my reserves as the system bent reality to my will. The concrete floor reformed, looking identical to the section I'd removed. But it was a lie. It was an eggshell. And beneath it, a dozen steel spikes waited. The construction drained me. My poisoned leg buckled, and I collapsed. Host vitals at 45%. The quill beasts, seeing me fall, saw their chance. They shrieked in triumph and skittered down the hallway ceiling at full speed, heading right for me. Roman! Raina screamed. She raised her shotgun, but she was too far away to get a clear shot. The creatures charged over the newly constructed patch of floor. For a heart-stopping second, it held. Then, with a crack of fracturing concrete, the floor gave way. The two beasts fell with surprised shrieks, straight onto the sharpened rebar spikes below. They were impaled instantly, their own momentum doing the work. Their death cries were short and wet. Silence returned. Trap kill bonus awarded. Elysian degenerates neutralized x2. Plus 150 chrono shards. I lay on the floor, panting, my leg a dead weight of agony. Raina rushed to my side, her face a mask of concern. You're poisoned. Roman, talk to me. System, I gasped. Construct antitoxin. Constructing basic antitoxin. Cost, 150 CS. A syringe filled with a clear, shimmering liquid materialized in my hand. Raina stared at it, speechless. Here, I said, handing it to her. My leg. Do it. Without hesitation, she grabbed the syringe, tore my pant leg, and plunged the needle into my thigh. The relief was instantaneous. A cooling sensation spread through my veins, washing away the fire. The numbness receded, replaced by a dull ache. Poison status effect cleared. Host vitals stabilizing at 35%. I took a deep, shuddering breath and sat up, leaning against the wall. You are, Raina said, shaking her head in disbelief, the strangest damn person I have ever met. I'll take that as a compliment, I rasped. We stayed there for a long time, catching our breath, letting the reality of our near-death experience sink in. I used the new shards to deconstruct the dead quill beasts and create a couple of biomesh patches for our various cuts and bruises. We were battered, but we were alive. We finally made it to the top floor, the executive suites, without further incident. The place was opulent. Plush carpets, expensive art on the walls, panoramic views of the burning city. It was Richard's domain. His office was the largest, a corner suite with a massive oak desk. On the desk was a framed photo. It was him and Rebecca, smiling on a yacht. They looked so happy. So perfect. The rage I had been keeping in check boiled over. I swept my arm across the desk, sending everything crashing to the floor. The picture frame shattered. Roman. Raina said, startled. I stood there, breathing heavily, my fists clenched. This was my boss's office, I said, my voice a low growl. He's the one who did this to me. With my wife. I didn't need to say more. She understood. She walked over and gently placed a hand on my shoulder. Her touch was firm, grounding. Then we'll make him pay, she said simply. But first, we secure this place. We rest. We can't hunt them if we're dead. Her pragmatism cut through my anger. She was right. We spent the next hour fortifying the executive floor. I used my system to deconstruct office furniture, turning desks and filing cabinets into raw materials. I then used those materials to construct heavy steel plates, which we used to barricade the stairwell doors and elevator shafts. I unlocked a new blueprint. Blueprint scanned, motion sensor, grade E. I built a half dozen of them and placed them at every potential entry point. They were linked to a small monitor I built for the main office, giving us an early warning system. Finally, we had a fortress. A safe house. Exhaustion hit me like a physical blow. We collapsed onto a ridiculously expensive leather couch in Richard's office, the barricaded door our only shield against the nightmare world outside. The city lights, once a symbol of life and progress, were now just the flickering embers of a funeral pyre. "We made it," I said, the words feeling hollow. "For now," Raina replied, her head leaning back against the cushions, her eyes closed. "What were you?" Before all this, she asked, her voice soft. The question surprised me. In the chaos, we hadn't spoken of anything but survival. "I told you." "A construction worker," I said. "I built things. Mostly foundations, support structures. The bones of these buildings." "It's funny," she mused. "You're still doing it. Just a different kind of building." "What about you?" I asked. "You said you were military police." She nodded, not opening her eyes. "For years. Stationed in Germany. After that, I did private security. Executive protection. That's what I was doing today. My client, he was one of the first to take Elysium." Her voice faltered for a moment. "He was so happy. For a week. Then this morning, in his limo he started changing. He killed the driver. I barely got out alive." She fell silent. The ghosts of our old lives filled the space between us. We were two people who had lost everything in the span of a single day. "I'm sorry," I said. "Me too," she whispered. We sat in a comfortable silence for a while, the sounds of the dying city a distant lullaby. I found a bottle of ridiculously expensive scotch in Richard's private bar. I deconstructed the lock on the cabinet and poured us both a glass. "To the end of the world," I toasted, holding up my glass. Raina opened her eyes and took the glass from me. Her fingers brushed against mine. A small spark of warmth in the cold, dead world. To kicking its ass, she countered, and we drank. The scotch burned, but it was a good burn. A fire in the belly that felt like life. We talked for hours. She told me about her childhood on a farm, about the discipline of the military, about the boredom of protecting rich men who thought they were gods. I told her about my life with Rebecca. The good years, when we were young and broke but happy. And the slow, creeping decay of our marriage as she grew more ambitious and I remained me. I told her about the betrayal. The elevator. The look on their faces. Sharing the story, saying it out loud to someone who listened, it didn't lessen the pain, but it took away some of its power over me. It transformed the memory from a source of shame into a source of fuel. As I spoke, her expression softened. She wasn't looking at me with pity. She was looking at me with a fierce, protective empathy. "They didn't just try to kill you, Roman," she said, her voice filled with a quiet intensity. "They tried to erase you. They made you feel like you were nothing." I couldn't speak. I just nodded, a lump forming in my throat. "You're not nothing," she said, her voice dropping to a near whisper. She moved closer on the couch. The space between us vanished. Her hand found mine, her fingers lacing through my own. Her touch was electric. "Look at what you've done today. You've fought monsters. You've saved my life. You've built a fortress with your bare hands. You are the furthest thing from nothing I have ever seen." Her dark eyes searched mine, and in their depths, I saw not just a soldier, not just a survivor, but a woman who was just as lost and scared as I was, holding on to the only other piece of solid ground in a world that had turned to quicksand. I leaned in. She met me halfway. Our lips met, and it wasn't a kiss of passion, not at first. It was a kiss of necessity. A desperate affirmation that we were still human, still alive, still capable of feeling something other than fear and rage. It was a confirmation that in the wreckage of all we had known, we had found each other. The kiss deepened, the initial desperation melting into a slow, burning warmth. The horrors outside, the burning city, the monsters in the streets, they all faded away, silenced by the simple, profound connection between two people in a dark room. She pulled back slightly, her forehead resting against mine. "Roman," she whispered. "I haven't," I replied, my voice thick with emotion. There was an unspoken question in the air, a vulnerability that was more terrifying than any dinosaur. In this new world, there was no tomorrow. There was only now. She stood, pulling me gently by the hand, and led me away from the window with its view of hell, towards the softer shadows of the room. Her message was clear. For one night, we wouldn't be warriors. We wouldn't be survivors. We would just be two people, holding back the darkness together. And in the silent heart of the apocalypse, we found a fragile, fleeting peace. I woke to the soft, grey light of dawn filtering through the grime on the office windows. For a blissful, disoriented moment, I didn't know where I was. Then the memories of the previous day came crashing back. The fall. The system. The raptors. Rebecca. Raina. I turned my head. She was asleep beside me on the couch, her dark hair fanned out across a ridiculously expensive silk cushion. In sleep, the hard, militaristic edges were gone. She looked younger, vulnerable. A blanket I didn't remember finding was draped over us. A new kind of warmth, one that had nothing to do with survival and everything to do with connection, settled in my chest. I had been betrayed by the woman who was supposed to love me forever. And I had found a deeper, more honest connection with a stranger in a single night than I had felt in years of marriage. The irony was a bitter pill. I slipped off the couch quietly, not wanting to wake her. My body ached, but it was a good ache. The ache of effort, not injury. I checked the motion sensor monitor. The hallways were clear. The streets below were quieter than the day before. The initial chaos seemed to be subsiding, replaced by an eerie, predatory calm. I opened my system status. Name, Roman. Level, 3. Title, none. Vitals, 150-150. System energy, 180-180. Chrono shards, 125. Strength, 13. Dexterity, 11. Stamina, 18. Cognition, 12. Unallocated stat points, 5. I'd leveled up again after the fight with the quill beasts. I needed to get smarter if I was going to outthink my opponents, not just outfight them. My construction and trap-making abilities were tied to my intellect. 5 points allocated to cognition. Cognition, 12 and GT, 17. My mind felt clearer. Sharper. The mental fog of exhaustion and trauma seemed to lift slightly. I could think more strategically. Our immediate needs were simple, water and food. The executive suite had a wet bar, but the water wasn't running. The snacks were high-end artisanal crackers and ancient nuts. Not exactly survivor food. We needed to go on a supply run. That meant going back out there. I looked at my blueprints. I had unlocked a few new things after the last fight. Blueprint, Caltrops, Grade F. Cost, 10 CS for 10 units. Blueprint, Simple Water Purifier, Grade E. Cost, 200 CS. The water purifier was essential, but I didn't have enough shards. I needed more raw materials. I began to silently deconstruct everything in the office that wasn't essential. The shattered picture frame. The expensive pen set on the floor. A hideous modern art sculpture in the corner. My chrono shard count slowly ticked up. 150, 175, 210. Enough. Construct simple water purifier? Why, Len? Yes. A device the size of a coffee maker materialized on the floor. It was a simple design, a reservoir with a series of filters and a small, solar-powered pump. Now we just needed water. Raina began to stir. She sat up, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. She saw me standing by the window, the newly created water purifier on the floor. A small smile touched her lips. Morning, architect. You've been busy. Morning, I said, my own lips curving into a smile that felt surprisingly natural. We need water. There's a rooftop maintenance access on this floor. Should be a water tank up there. Good thinking, she said, standing and stretching. Then we need food. There was a high-end grocery store on the ground floor of this building. For the office workers. It'll be picked clean. Or full of customers. Probably both, she agreed. But we have to try. We can't survive on $100 scotch and stale crackers. We geared up. The vests felt like a second skin now. The weight of the pistol on my hip was reassuring. Raina racked her shotgun with a practiced click that was music to my ears. We were a team. The rooftop water tank was a success. It was mostly full, and I managed to siphon several gallons of questionable-looking water into a deconstructed then reconstructed container. We ran it through the purifier, and the result was clean, clear water. It was the best thing I'd ever tasted. Now for the hard part. The grocery store. We made our way back down the stairs, our senses on high alert. The building was still quiet, which was somehow more unnerving than the chaos. The ground floor was a wreck. The glass front of the building was shattered, and the lobby was a mess of debris and dried blood. The grocery store, a place called Urban Harvest, had its metal security gate pulled down, but it was bent and partially ripped open. A gap just big enough for a person to squeeze through. Looks like we're not the first ones here, Raina whispered, peering through the gap. I could hear noises from inside. Not dinosaur noises. Human noises. Whispering. The soft clink of glass. Survivors. My first instinct was relief. Other people. Safety in numbers. But Raina put a restraining hand on my arm. Hold on, she hissed. Don't be stupid. Desperate people are more dangerous than monsters. She was right. I pushed down my naive optimism. We watched for a few minutes. I saw at least 3 people moving inside, their forms silhouetted by the faint light coming through the broken storefront windows. They were armed with makeshift weapons. Baseball bats, kitchen knives. We can't fight them, I said. We don't even know if they're hostile. Assume everyone is hostile until proven otherwise, she countered. But we need what's in there. So we don't fight. We get in, we take what we need, and we get out. Quietly. A stealth mission, I said. I'm a construction worker, not a spy. Just follow my lead and don't step on anything loud, she said, and with a lithe movement, she slipped through the gap in the security gate. I took a deep breath and followed her in. The store was a disaster zone. Shelves were toppled, goods were strewn all over the floor. It smelled of spilled wine and rotting fruit. The other survivors were on the far side of the store, in the canned goods aisle, their backs to us. They were arguing in low voices. Raina pointed towards the bottled water and energy bar section, near the front of the store. It was our target. We moved in a low crouch, using the toppled shelves as cover. My heart was a frantic drum against my ribs. Every crunch of glass under my boot sounded like a gunshot. We reached the aisle. Jackpot! Cases of bottled water, protein bars, jerky. Enough to last us for weeks. We began stuffing our backpacks, moving as quickly and quietly as possible. That's when we heard the scream. It wasn't from the other survivors. It came from the back of the store, from the loading bay. The 3 survivors with the bats and knives froze. Then came a new sound. A heavy, wet, dragging sound. And a low, guttural clicking. Something was in the store with us. One of the other survivors, a young man in a hoodie, made a fatal mistake. He panicked. He bolted, trying to make a run for the front entrance. From the darkness of the meat section, a creature emerged. It was pale and fleshy, almost translucent. It had 6 spider-like legs, but its body was reptilian, and its head was a nightmarish cross between an insect and a lizard, with multiple eyes and a set of dripping mandibles. It moved with a horrifying, sideways scuttling motion. Threat detected, Stage 2 Elysium degenerate, crawl akin. Analysis, high armor, venomous bite, wall climbing ability. The creature was impossibly fast. It shot out a thick, glistening strand of webbing from its mouth that wrapped around the running man's legs. He fell with a cry. The crawler-kin dragged him back into the shadows. His screams were cut short with a sickening, wet crunch. The other 2 survivors were paralyzed with fear. Raina and I were frozen behind our shelf, our backpacks half full. The crawler-kin emerged back into the dim light, its mandibles slick with blood. It turned its multi-faceted gaze on the 2 remaining survivors. They finally broke out of their terror-induced paralysis and charged, screaming, swinging their pathetic weapons. A baseball bat bounced harmlessly off the creature's chitinous armor. A kitchen knife failed to find a purchase. The crawler-kin dispatched them with a horrifying efficiency, its sharp legs piercing and slashing. In seconds, it was over. And then, the creature began to sniff the air. Its head turned slowly, methodically, scanning the store. It was hunting. And it knew there was more prey to be found. Its cluster of eyes fixed on our aisle. It knew we were here. "We have to move," Raina breathed, her voice barely audible. "The front door is a death trap. The loading bay is where it came from." "There's a staff room in the back," I whispered, my mind racing. "Usually an emergency exit. It's on the other side of that thing." The crawler-kin began to scuttle towards us, its claws clicking on the tiled floor. We were out of options. "When it gets to the end of the aisle, we run," she said. "Don't look back. Just run." The creature reached the head of our aisle. It paused, tilting its insectoid head. "Now!" Raina yelled. We bolted from our cover, running in the opposite direction, deeper into the store. The crawler shrieked, a sound like grinding glass, and gave chase. We sprinted through the wreckage, vaulting over toppled displays. The creature was gaining on us, its scuttling steps echoing behind us. I saw the door marked "Staff Only." "There!" I shouted. We were 10 feet away when the creature spat another web. It missed me, but it caught Raina square in the back. She was thrown off her feet, pulled backward as if on a bungee cord. "Roman," she screamed. I didn't hesitate. I turned and fired my pistol. The bullet sparked against the crawler's armor, having no effect. It ignored me, focusing on reeling in its captured prey. Raina was trying to cut the web with her knife, but it was too thick, too strong. I was out of time. I needed to pierce its armor. I looked around wildly. Wine aisle. Bottles of expensive red wine shattered all over the floor. And the cleaning aisle next to it. Bleach. Ammonia. An idea, a terrible, reckless idea from a high school chemistry class I barely passed, exploded in my mind. My system flared with a new blueprint, one born from my own desperate cognition. New blueprint synthesized, improvised chemical bomb, grade D. Warning, unstable compound. High risk of self-injury. Materials required, glass container, bleach, ammonia, cloth rag. Construction cost, 50 chrono shards. All the ingredients were right here. Deconstruct. I roared, pointing at the shelves. Bottles, rags, cleaning supplies dissolved into light and raw components. Plus 110 chrono shards. Construct. A wine bottle filled with a swirling, volatile mixture of chemicals appeared in my hand, a rag stuffed into its neck. I didn't have a lighter. I looked at my hand, at the system that bent reality. System command, ignite. Cost, 10 system energy. Yes. The tip of the rag sparked and caught fire. The crawlerkin had dragged Raina almost to its snapping mandibles. Get down! I screamed. I threw the makeshift bomb with all my strength. It wasn't a perfect throw. It didn't hit the creature. It hit the floor right in front of it. The bottle shattered, and the two chemicals mixed. The result was not an explosion of fire, but a violent, instantaneous chemical reaction. A massive cloud of thick, noxious chlorine gas erupted from the point of impact. The crawlerkin shrieked, a sound different from before. A sound of agony. The gas was bypassing its armor, attacking its soft respiratory tissues. It thrashed wildly, releasing Raina as it clawed at its own face. I rushed forward, grabbed Raina, and pulled her towards the staff room door. The gas was spreading, burning my lungs, my eyes. We stumbled through the door, slamming it shut behind us, and collapsed to the floor, coughing and gagging. Through the small window in the door, I saw the crawlerkin stagger and fall, convulsing in the thick, yellowish cloud. We had done it. We had survived. Raina looked at me, her eyes streaming, a look of utter shock on her face. A chemical bomb? Seriously? They said I'd never use high school chemistry. I coughed, a painful grin spreading across my face. The rest of the day was a blur of survival. We found the emergency exit, which led to a back alley mercifully clear of any immediate threats. We made it back to our fortress in the sky, our backpacks loaded with precious food and water. We were exhausted, poisoned, and battered, but we were victorious. As night fell again on the ruined city, we stood at the panoramic window of Richard's office, eating protein bars that tasted like the finest meal on earth. We can't keep doing this, Raina said quietly, her gaze distant. Scavenging runs like this, our luck will run out. We were almost killed for a few bottles of water. I know, I said. But what's the alternative? We need a better plan. A long-term goal. You want revenge on your boss, right? I nodded. Then let's make that the mission. We stop reacting, and we start hunting. We find information. We track him down. We need a purpose other than just seeing the next sunrise. Her words resonated with a deep and profound truth. Revenge wasn't just a desire anymore. It was a necessity. It was the North Star that could guide us through this madness. Okay, I said. So how do we find him? In a city of millions, now a city of monsters. Men like him, men with power and money, they don't just disappear, she said, her tactical mind kicking in. They have plans. Bunkers. Evacuation routes. His company, Omnicorp, their headquarters is downtown. If there's any trace of his plan, it'll be there. On a server, in a file. It was a long shot. A suicide mission. Downtown would be the heart of the chaos. But it was a plan. It was a goal. I looked at Raina, at her determined face illuminated by the fires of the city below. I had fallen into this hell alone, betrayed and broken. But I wasn't alone anymore. I had a partner. A warrior. And for the first time since I woke up in that crumpled elevator, I felt something more than just the will to survive. I felt a spark of hope. Omnicorp headquarters, I said, the words tasting like a promise. All right, Raina. Let's go hunting. The decision was made. Omnicorp Tower. The name itself felt like a curse, a monolith of glass and steel at the heart of the city that represented everything that had gone wrong in my life. It was Richard's throne, and we were going to tear it down. But charging in was suicide. As Raina said, we needed to stop reacting and start planning. For 2 days, we turned our top-floor fortress into a workshop and a training ground. The mission forced a paradigm shift in how I used the architect system. It wasn't just a survival tool anymore. It was an arsenal. I spent hours deconstructing everything non-essential on the executive floor. Luxury furniture, electronics, decorative steel, partition walls, all of it was broken down into a growing pile of chrono shards and raw materials. My level increased, my cognition stat grew, and with it, my ability to innovate. Cognition stat at 25, blueprint synthesis unlocked. You may now combine known blueprints to create new, hybrid designs. This was a game changer. I started with our armor. The simple Kevlar vests had saved our lives, but they wouldn't stand up to the threats downtown. I combined the Kevlar vest, Grade D, blueprint with the plate shield, Grade D, blueprint. The system word, analyzing the composite structure. New blueprint created, plated tactical vest, Grade C. Armor plating interwoven with ballistic fiber. Offers superior protection against piercing and blunt force trauma. Construction cost, 700 chrono shards, 10x Grade D bony plates, 5x Grade D synthetic fiber. It was expensive, but we had the resources. I constructed 2 sets. They were beautiful pieces of apocalyptic engineering, matte black with interlocking grey plates over the chest and back. They were heavy, but wearing one felt like being encased in a second skeleton of pure safety. Next were the weapons. Raina's shotgun was reliable, but its range was a liability. My pistol was accurate but lacked stopping power. I scanned them both with the system, then began to experiment. I synthesized the shotgun's pump-action mechanism with the rifle barrel of a hunting rifle I deconstructed from a display case in one of the offices. New blueprint created, breacher slug rifle, Grade C. Fires shotgun slugs with the accuracy of a rifle. Devastating at medium range. For myself, I combined the pistol's frame with the magnetic coils from a high-end server's hard drive and the focusing lens from a laserdisc player. New blueprint created, coil gun pistol, Grade C. Uses electromagnetic force to propel a steel flechette at hypersonic speeds. High armor penetration. We spent hours on the building's abandoned rooftop, which we turned into a firing range, calibrating our new arsenal. Raina handled the slug rifle like she was born with it, blowing apart chunks of concrete with terrifying accuracy. My coil gun was quieter, firing with a sharp crack and a flash of blue light. The steel flechettes it shot could punch a clean hole through a steel girder. We were no longer just survivors. We were becoming predators. On the dawn of the 3rd day, we stood before the barricaded door, ready to leave our sanctuary. We were clad in our new armor, armed with our custom weapons. Our backpacks were light, carrying only water, biomesh, and ammunition. We would scavenge what else we needed on the way. Ready, architect? Raina asked, her voice calm and steady. She looked different. Not just the armor, but her eyes. The fear was gone, replaced by a cold, hard focus that was both terrifying and beautiful. I am if you are, I replied, chambering a flechette into my coil gun. She reached out and squeezed my hand. Her armored glove was cold, but her grip was warm and full of strength. No matter what happens out there, Roman, she said, her voice soft. I'm glad I'm not alone. Me too, I said, and the words felt more true than anything I had ever said in my life. We descended into hell. The journey downtown was a brutal odyssey through a city that was actively trying to kill us. The streets were impassable, littered with the husks of cars and overrun with packs of raptor kin that were now faster, smarter, and hunted with terrifying coordination. We took to the rooftops. It was a treacherous, vertigo-inducing path, leaping from building to building, using fire escapes and scaffolding as our highways. Here, the primary threat was from the sky. Pterodactyl-like creatures, which the system called shriekers, circled constantly. Their cries echoed between the concrete canyons, and their shadows were a constant, moving threat on the ground below. We had our first close call on the roof of a department store. We were crossing a makeshift bridge of fallen girders when two of them descended, their leathery wings blotting out the sun. They were massive, with 10-foot wingspans and jagged, tooth-filled beaks. Raina opened up with the breacher rifle. The slug hit the first shrieker in the chest, sending it tumbling from the sky with a pained screech. The second one was on me. It dove, its talons extended, aiming to pluck me from the girder and carry me away. I didn't have time for a clean shot. Instead, I activated my system. I targeted the steel girder beneath my feet. Deconstruct? Why, Len? Yes. A 5-foot section of the girder directly in front of me dissolved into blue light. The shrieker, expecting solid steel, found only empty air. Its talons closed on nothing, its momentum carrying it straight down into the newly formed gap. It shrieked in surprise as it fell, not to the street below, but into the darkened, hollow shell of the building. I didn't wait to see if it survived. We ran. Our next major obstacle was the river that divided the city. The bridges were all blocked or destroyed, clogged with a cataclysmic pile-up of cars and military vehicles. Our only way across was down, through the subway tunnels. The darkness below was absolute. Our flashlights cut feeble cones into the oppressive gloom. The air was cold and damp and smelled of decay and stagnant water. And we were not alone. The creatures down here were different. They were pale, almost white, their eyes vestigial and useless in the eternal darkness. The system called them Gowl Claws. They were devolved from people who had been in the subway when the change happened. They hunted by sound, their long, 3-jointed limbs ending in wicked scythe-like claws that they used to feel their way along the tunnel walls. We had to move in total silence. Every step was a calculated risk. Every drip of water from the ceiling was a potential death sentence. We were halfway through the tunnel when Raina's foot slipped on a patch of slick mold. She didn't fall, but her boot scraped against the concrete. It was a small sound. In the absolute silence, it was a thunderclap. From the darkness ahead, a chorus of clicking, chittering sounds erupted. And then, the sound of dozens of claws scrabbling against the walls, coming towards us. Run, Raina breathed. And we ran. We sprinted through the darkness, our flashlight beams bouncing wildly, illuminating fleeting, nightmarish glimpses of the pale hunters closing in from all sides. They were on the tracks, on the walls, on the ceiling. A sea of white limbs and clicking claws. One of them dropped from the ceiling in front of me. I fired the coil gun. The flechette punched through its soft, pale flesh, and it collapsed without a sound. But there were too many. They were swarming us. I could feel their foul breath on the back of my neck. Then I saw it. A maintenance junction, a small concrete room off to the side of the main tunnel, its steel door slightly ajar. In here! I yelled, shoving Raina towards it. We tumbled into the small room, and I slammed the heavy door shut just as the first of the Gowl Claws slammed against it from the other side. I braced myself against the door, the steel groaning under the weight of the horde. Claws scrabbled at the edges, searching for a purchase. We're trapped, Raina said, her voice grim. She was right. The room was a dead end. A concrete box. The door wouldn't hold forever. No, I said, my mind racing. We're not trapped. They are. I placed my hand on the concrete wall beside the door frame. Target acquired, reinforced concrete wall. Deconstruction level required, 5. Current level, 4. Damn it! I cursed. I wasn't strong enough. My system pinged. System overdrive protocol available. Temporarily boosts all system functions by 200% for 30 seconds. Warning: causes critical system energy drain and potential host burnout. Activate? Why Len? The door buckled, a dent appearing in the center. We were out of time. Yes! I roared. A surge of pure power, raw and intoxicating, flooded through me. My vision was tinted blue, and every blueprint, every function of my system felt supercharged. Deconstruction level temporarily boosted to 8. I slammed my hand against the wall. Deconstruct. The concrete didn't just dissolve. It exploded into a vortex of blue particles, the sheer speed of the deconstruction creating a powerful vacuum that pulled at everything in the room. I deconstructed the wall, the ceiling, the floor, everything around the steel door. In seconds, the entire section of the tunnel collapsed, burying the door and the horde of gowl claws outside under thousands of tons of rock and concrete. The overdrive faded, leaving me panting, drained, and dizzy. My system energy was at 0. But we were alive. The tunnel ahead was now a dead end. But as the dust settled, I saw it. My deconstruction had exposed a storm drain runoff pipe, large enough for a person to crawl through. An exit. We emerged from the pipe into the grey light of a new day, covered in filth and sore water, but alive. We were downtown. The buildings here were taller, the destruction more profound. And the dinosaurs were bigger. Much bigger. We saw our first T-Rex 2 blocks from the Omnicorp Tower. It was a true monster, a Stage 3 degenerate that stood for stories tall. It wasn't just rampaging. It was nesting. It had created a crude nest of buses and debris in the middle of a plaza, and it was fiercely territorial. We had to give it a wide berth, a process that took hours of sneaking through ruined office buildings, my heart in my throat the entire time. And then, we saw it. Omnicorp Tower. It was a sleek, black skyscraper that soared into the smoky sky, miraculously intact. It was an island of order in a sea of chaos. The ground floor was fortified. Steel barricades, automated turrets, and armed guards in black tactical gear. Richard had his own private army. So this is it, Raina said, observing the tower from a block away with a pair of binoculars I had constructed. The final boss level. How do we get in? I asked. The front door is a death trap. We don't use the front door, she said, a grim smile on her face. We use the service entrance. Every building this size has a network of maintenance tunnels connecting it to the city's infrastructure. Power, water, telecom. She pointed to a manhole cover a few hundred feet from the tower's perimeter. That's our door. The maintenance tunnels were a claustrophobic maze of pipes and cables, but they were unguarded. We found our way into the sub-basement of the Omnicorp Tower. The air hummed with the sound of powerful generators. Richard had his own power grid. The tower was a self-contained arcology. We fought our way up, floor by floor. The guards were well-trained and well-armed, but they were just men. They weren't prepared for a man who could turn their cover into dust and fire hypersonic spikes from his pistol. Raina moved like a ghost, her combat skills honed to a razor's edge, dispatching them with a ruthless efficiency that left me in awe. On the 50th floor, we found the labs. And we found the truth. It was all there, on a server that I managed to access by deconstructing its security casing. Video logs. Research data. Memos from Richard himself. Elysium wasn't a mistake. It was a weapon. Project Chimera. The goal was to create a targeted bioweapon that could devolve a population, turning them into uncontrollable monsters. Then, Omnicorp, safe in their bunkers, would ride out the storm and emerge as the rulers of a cleansed, empty world. They even had a cure, an inhibitor enzyme. But the data showed it was a failure. The devolution process was too aggressive, too unpredictable. It couldn't be controlled or reversed. Richard knew. He knew the drug was a death sentence when he put it on the market. He did it anyway. He triggered the apocalypse as a massive, bloody fire sale, a way to liquidate his failed project and disappear with the profits. And there, in a subfolder, was the final piece of the puzzle. A video log from Rebecca. It was dated the day before the fall. She looked nervous, but her eyes were cold. "Richard, the plan is in motion," she said to the camera. "Roman will be taken care of at the construction site. He's become a liability. He knows I've been accessing the project files from home. He doesn't understand what he's seen, but he's asking questions. He has to go." She paused, a flicker of something, regret? Guilt, crossing her face before it was gone. "It's for the best. He's always been dead weight. In the new world, there's no room for that. We'll be free." The video ended. The cold fury that filled me was so intense it felt like my bones were freezing. Dead weight. She had said it with such ease. The woman I had loved, the life we had built, it was all a lie. A business transaction she was now liquidating. "Roman," Raina said, her voice soft. She placed a hand on my shoulder. I looked at her, and the ice in my veins began to melt. She was real. This was real. "Let's finish this," I said, my voice dangerously quiet. The penthouse was on the 80th floor. The elevator was still running, reserved for the top brass. We took it. The ride up was silent, the final calm before the storm. The doors opened into a scene of obscene luxury. Marble floors, priceless art, and a floor-to-ceiling window with a panoramic, God's eye view of the burning world they had created. And there they were. Richard was standing by the window, a glass of wine in his hand, looking down at his handiwork like a king. Rebecca was on a plush sofa, looking bored. They weren't surprised to see us. "Roman," Richard said, a slow, arrogant smile spreading across his face. "I have to admit, I'm impressed. The rat survived the fall." He looked at Raina, his eyes slithering over her in a way that made my blood boil. "And you've picked up a stray. A pretty one, too." "It's over, Rick," I said, my coil gun steady in my hand. "We found the labs. We know everything." Rebecca finally looked at me. There was no remorse in her eyes. Only annoyance. "You always were a pest, Roman. Too stupid to know when you're beaten." "I've learned a few new things," I said, letting the blue light of my system glow faintly around my hand. Richard laughed. "Ah, yes. The anomalies. The side effects of the atmospheric viral agent. We've monitored a few of you gifted individuals. A fascinating, but ultimately irrelevant, mutation. You see, while you were developing party tricks, we were perfecting the next stage of human evolution." He gestured to a medical station in the corner of the room. 2 large syringes lay on a tray, filled with a viscous, glowing fluid. "This is no longer about a cure," he said, his eyes gleaming with a feverish light. "It's about control. A modified strain. All the power, none of the mindless devolution. The strength of a tyrannosaur, the mind of a man. We will be gods in this new world we have created." "You're insane," Raina said, her slug rifle aimed at his chest. "He's always been insane," Rebecca said, rising from the couch. She walked to the medical tray and picked up one of the syringes. "But he's also right. Why survive, when you can rule?" She looked at me, a cruel smirk on her face. "This is what you never understood, Roman. You were always content to build things for other people. We prefer to own them." And with that, she plunged the syringe into her own neck. Richard followed suit, a look of ecstatic triumph on his face. For a moment, nothing happened. Then, their bodies began to change. It was a horrific, accelerated version of the transformation I had witnessed before. Bones cracked and reformed. Skin stretched and hardened into scales. Their screams of pain mingled with roars of savage power. Richard swelled in size, his body becoming a hulking, bipedal monstrosity. His skin turned into thick, grey armor plating, and his head elongated into the unmistakable, powerful snout of a T-Rex, but his eyes, his intelligent, hateful eyes, remained. Rebecca's transformation was different. She remained lean, but her body became a whipcord of taut muscle. Her skin took on a mottled, predatory camouflage pattern, and a long, reptilian tail whipped back and forth behind her. Her fingers and toes elongated into the curved, sickle-like claws of a raptor. They stood before us, two perfect, sentient monsters. The final, twisted products of their own ambition. The battle was immediate and brutal. Richard Rex charged, his roar shaking the very foundations of the building. I met his charge not with force, but with architecture. Deconstruct! I yelled, targeting the marble floor beneath his feet. A huge section of the floor vanished, creating a pit. He roared in surprise as he stumbled, his massive legs crashing through into the floor below. It didn't stop him for long. He bellowed in rage and smashed his way out, but it gave Raina the opening she needed. She fired the breacher rifle. The slug, which would have torn a normal man in half, slammed into his armored hide and ricocheted off with a metallic screech. His armor was too thick. Rebecca Raptor was a blur of motion. She darted towards Raina, her claws flashing. I constructed a thick steel wall between them, a blueprint I pulled from my own memory of a construction site. She crashed into it, her claws screeching against the metal. She was fast, but predictable. "They're too strong," Raina shouted, taking cover behind a pillar. "We can't pierce his armor." "Then we change the battlefield," I yelled back. This was Richard's throne room. I was going to unmake it. I went into overdrive. The world turned blue. Power surged through me. I wasn't just deconstructing. I was reshaping reality. I pulled steel support beams out of the walls and ceilings, twisting them into massive caltrops on the floor. I deconstructed the massive panoramic window, letting the howling wind and the sounds of the apocalypse flood the room. Richard Rex roared in fury as he stumbled onto the rebar spikes, one of them piercing his less armored foot. He bellowed in pain, his intelligent eyes locking onto me with pure murder. While he was distracted, Raina took aim at the one weak spot she could see, his eyes. She fired. The slug missed his eye, but it tore through the softer flesh of his snout. He roared in agony, shaking his massive head. Rebecca Raptor was on me, leaping over the obstacles I created. She was a whirlwind of claws and teeth. I met her attacks with my shield, the impacts jarring my entire body. She was strong, but I was smarter. I let her press her attack, backing me up towards the open window. "You were always weak, Roman," she shrieked, her voice a horrifying blend of human and reptile. "Always holding me back." "You're right," I said, gritting my teeth as her claws raked across my shield. "I should have let you go a long time ago." And with my free hand, I deconstructed the floor beneath her feet. She shrieked in surprise as the marble vanished, leaving only a clear drop to the city 80 floors below. Her claws scrabbled for purchase on the edge, her tail whipping widely for balance. Her reptilian eyes widened, a flicker of the human woman she used to be shining through. A flicker of fear. She looked at me, her claws slipping. "Roman, help me." I looked down into her terrified, monstrous face. The face of the woman I had loved, the woman who had sent me to my death without a second thought. I thought of the elevator. Of her cold, final goodbye. I raised my coil gun. "Goodbye, Becca," I said. And I fired. The flechette hit her hand, shattering her grip. She fell without another sound, a dwindling silhouette against the burning city. One down. Richard Rex saw what I had done. He let out a roar of pure, unadulterated rage and charged, ignoring the pain in his foot, ignoring Raina's constant barrage of fire. He was focused only on me. I had nowhere to run. My overdrive was fading. My system energy was critical. This was it. As his massive, tooth-filled jaws opened to snap me in two, I played my last card. I didn't try to build a wall. I didn't try to dodge. I targeted the ceiling directly above him. The ridiculously oversized, multi-ton crystal chandelier that hung in the center of the room. The support chain holding it was thick steel. My deconstruction power, even faded, was enough. "Deconstruct chain," I whispered. The chain dissolved. For a moment, the massive chandelier hung in the air, suspended by sheer inertia. Then, gravity took over. It fell. Richard Rex looked up, his intelligent eyes widening in a moment of pure, undiluted panic. He had no time to move. The chandelier, a multi-ton behemoth of crystal and steel, crashed down onto his head with the force of a meteor. There was a sickening, final crunch of bone and metal. And then, silence. The wind howled through the ruined penthouse. I stood there, panting, my body screaming in protest. It was over. Raina walked over to me, her rifle lowered. She looked at the spot where Rebecca had fallen, then at the crushed remains of Richard. She put her hand on my arm. "It's done, Roman." I nodded, the rage that had fueled me for so long finally extinguishing, leaving a vast, hollow emptiness in its wake. I looked out the window. At the ruined city. At the dinosaurs that now roamed the streets. This was the world they had made. And now, it was ours. We didn't fix the world. The apocalypse didn't end. There was no magic cure, no reset button. The age of man was over. The age of survival had begun. But as I stood there, with Raina's hand in mine, the emptiness inside me began to fill with something new. Not rage. Not vengeance. Hope. We had the Omnicorp Tower, a fortress with its own power and resources. We had the truth about Elysium, a truth we could one day use to help other survivors. We had each other. I looked at Raina, at her strong, beautiful face, and I knew that my old life, the life that had been stolen from me, didn't matter anymore. It was just the foundation. The painful, necessary groundwork for the new life I was about to build. "So what now, architect?" she asked, her voice soft. I smiled, a real, genuine smile. I was no longer a victim. I was no longer a ghost. I was a builder. And we had a whole new world to build. "Now," I said, squeezing her hand. "We get to work."